So, for people who don't know,
Mhm.
we have been trying to put this interview together for a number of months.
Yes.
um, Back in March, you and I met up at PAX in Boston, and we had a nice chat, and we got onto a topic that we both were very passionate about. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yay.
Um, but there are two things I want to ask you before we start that conversation that I'm curious about.
Mhm.
The first one is something I'm not sure you've been asked yet. I haven't heard it from anywhere, but I saw it on your Wikipedia page. And it said, and I know Wikipedia can be wrong, so if it's wrong, correct me. But in your education, it said that you were in a gerbil breeding club.
Yeah.
What the
Yeah.
heck is that?
Isn't that fun? Isn't that a fun thing? So I don't tend to my Wikipedia even slightly,
Hmm.
and that's unfortunately something that someone has added to it, and I refuse to take it off. It's not true. It's not even remotely true. There's lots of things about my Wikipedia page that are wrong, but I'm not one of these people that's going to kind of tailor my Wikipedia page to what I want. So I'm like, whatever is whatever. I mean, I put enough nonsense on the internet anyway, so it's fine. But no, I'm not. I'm not the president of the Gerbil Breeding Society. But I think someone put it on there because I said on a podcast somewhere you can do whatever you want on my Wikipedia page, and someone went okay, and I just haven't changed it.
That's
Um, but I quite like the idea that the law is there now, that I'm now officially that, and actually doesn't matter whether I have or not. Enough people believe it to be true.
yeah. I was wondering
Streisand
about that.
affecting it. Yeah,
Has anyone ever asked you about that before?
they have actually. I think I've been asked twice about it, but like it is it's such a it stands out, doesn't it? It stands out like a sore
It
thumb on my
does.
Wikipedia. I really should do something about it, but I am quite lazy in that regard. Like I think Wikipedia is in such an interesting place because it is full of so much misinformation.
Yeah.
Um, and I just can't be bothered to change it. I'm like, if you want to find out, you can ask me in person, and
Yeah,
that's what you're doing,
absolutely. Yeah. It's why I tell my students you can't use Wikipedia as a source because it's
No,
anybody can edit it. The second thing I wanted to ask about, which I'm sure you have been asked before, but you've been on a lot of podcasts that were over an hour long, and I could not get to all of them.
that's okay.
I was just wondering about it because I was watching somebody play through 16 since it came
Mhm.
out on PC recently, and they were going through all the side quests. And when I went through it, I wasn't able to do that because I was a reviewer at the time and I had to get through it quickly to get my review out. So I didn't do any of the
Mhm.
side quests. But he was doing them and they were all voiced. And I was like, holy, this game is so long. There are so many cutscenes. And there's not like, when we had 15, there were a couple of people that we were traveling with. But
Mhm.
Clive is really kind of the only person, besides maybe Jill or a couple other people, in specific moments, are with him. So Clive is really the one speaking a lot. So how long did it take you to record all of that?
We did hundreds and hundreds of hours. Um, I recorded at a place called Side UK. There's Side US. I think there's one in Singapore as well, and they are post production houses where most people will record a lot of things. So you'll have like Liquid Violet and Side, and I recorded them at Side. And at the time, I think we worked out that I was the one actor who'd been in the most for a single role. And not just because of the volume. I think there are people who've had more to do in a game. I kind of think of Doug in The Witcher. I think maybe he has had more lines because of just the density of what that role requires. But I just think because everything's very, very cinematic, and also the team when we were doing those like big cinematics, they took a long time to do. They were very technically difficult to actually record, and so they would take ages. And normally, when you go into something give you a look behind the curtain, for instance. When you're recording something, the directors and often the team, because there are budgets, it'll be like, right, we need to get through 40 lines an hour. We need to get through 80 lines an hour. On 16 with me, it really would vary. Like I sometimes it'd let us go really slow. Sometimes we would do 10 lines an hour because it would just take that long because they were 10 very important lines. And obviously lines vary in length. They vary from all right to just incredibly long lines. So yeah, that would be a thing. And it was a long time. It took me 4 years in total, beginning to end. Um,
Wow.
yeah, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours.
I didn't expect to hear 4 years. I remember, I think you posted a picture of the script.
Hmm.
I just,
No,
like, I,
I did. I did. I remember I posted a video of the last line.
Was it a video?
It was a video. I mean, like I think the other Japanese guy posted a page of the script, right? Which is like that.
It was really
I
long.
I couldn't do that. Like what it changed all. It didn't change all the time, but like when scripts sometimes when you're working at this speed can come in hot. So we're getting scripts in the day before because people are trying to get this turnover as fast as possible. So I couldn't read scripts before going in. Also, I'm very lucky that I'm quite an instinctual actor. So God, that sounds really wanky, doesn't it? I'm quite an instinctual actor, but that's how I work. I think I say this to a lot of directors I work with. You're probably going to get a better take from me take 1 or 2 than you are take 10, because I get inside my own head and you start creating a facsimile of the time that you did it, and it becomes very kind of disingenuous. So like I'm much better reading something for the first time, and actually a lot of the takes that work really well in 16 that people really like are ones that I did first time. They're not lines that I did 10 or 12 times.
Yeah, it was. I know there's a lot of discourse right now around like 14's voice acting and what just came out around Don Cheryl, but I haven't had any like moments where I was taken out of it because of any kind of voice acting. I'm just like, this is every time I'm just like, this is so good, like so good. So,
Yeah.
and a lot of people really
Thanks.
enjoy it. But to get into the topic that we had discussed at PAX East that we have been thinking about for like 6 or 7 months now, we discussed about the games we love and the games we don't love quite as much. But
Yes.
we talked a lot about our love of games and why we should love them unashamedly. And so I wanted to start off with a question that might get us thinking about some of the games that we can talk about in relation to it. So when I say that game is great, I don't understand the hate it gets. What games
Yeah.
pop up in your mind?
I mean, we're instantly getting into like Ben has opinions territory.
That's what you're here for. I want your
No,
opinions.
I know. I don't understand the hate it gets. Like, I think video games, the experiences we have with video games are not the games themselves. Like, you don't love a game, you love your time with that game. And so what we're not talking about you playing a game. We're talking about how you chose to spend your time and how much joy you took from that time that you were playing it. And I think discourse gets lost in that. That what you're saying is, I played a video game that I really enjoyed. I had a great time with it. But there is this desperate need in the industry, a desperate need to create objective truth. The value that the video game industry places on Metacritic is insane to me. It's crazy. It holds no other value in all the other art forms. But for some reason in video games, it is seen as this benchmark of quality in some way, when in fact what you're seeing is people saying, I'm going to give a number to my experience within that and trying to create some sort of objective truth. It's also like Metacritic is crazy because it's a median, right? And also it's weighted in weird ways. It is what it is, but we place such a huge value on that. But to get back to the point of like, is a game good or not? Like, there's the easy ally swimming in sevens, and like, I can love a 7 out of 10 game. Like, what does a 7 out of 10 game mean to you? Why are we trying to place a numerical value on an experience that we had? And so what games come to mind that I don't understand the hate that it gets? I kind of understand every bit of hate that games that I like get, because I can recognize how you don't place the same value on that time, because you might have been distracted by doing other things, or you might have had to play it for review and get through it really, really quickly. You may have a different experience playing that game. I love the fact that I got to play Jedi Survivor recently. I got to play that game after it had been patched in the new year, and it was an insanely pleasurable experience because I had no time pressures. I loved it. Just everything clicked about it. The amount of free time that I had to be able to indulge in that was beautiful. I really was able to kind of like sit in the story, sit in the world, have a wonderful, wonderful time, not feel any sort of pressure on this. But when it came out, a lot of people were criticizing it for a number of things, which probably at the time were valid. But the time that I spent with that game is incredibly precious to me, and an experience that I'm very, very thankful for. The same with Inscription. Now, people have said that's an objectively great game. I know many people that dislike that game because they aren't aren't able to get through the initial barrier of it, or they go, I don't like deck builders, I don't like this, like your mileage may vary on any artistic experience that you have, because we're not talking about almost like the game itself is a vector for joy. It's about how much joy did you get from this experience. I was working yesterday. Sorry, I feel like I'm going on, but like I was working
No, go ahead.
yesterday on a job, and
Mm-hmm.
the director said to me, "What did you do today?" And I said, "Oh, I washed the floor, and I put my clothes away, and I bought myself some new trainers. I've had a great day." And he said, "Wow, it's amazing for someone who can find pleasure in such small things." And I think that's what we're asking: is where do we find pleasure in those individual experiences? And some people will find pleasure in a good cup of coffee. Some people will find pleasure in just walking in nature. Some people will find pleasure in standing in the rain. Some people will take pleasure in listening to a great podcast. But we do not enjoy things equally, and therefore we will not enjoy games equally. Um, that's me prefacing this entire podcast experience of where I will probably come from when it comes
Yeah,
to regards to
yeah,
that.
and we talked a lot about that the first time we chatted. I remember writing something down. I think I actually tossed that note, but it said that we take somebody's negative experience of a game that we love as a personal shot at how we spend our free time, and that is
Yes.
exactly what you've said. That is 100% what it is. And the reason I was like, I have done so much research for this interview just because this issue, not issue, but this topic goes way beyond video games and deep into how we are as humans, how we enjoy things, and how art is subjective, and those that art is in the form of a video game. And when something is subjective, it means that not everyone's going to like it. But you're absolutely right that some people want to have this objective view of the game and make it objective to other people, where you're kind of trying to force a square peg into a triangle slot,
Mm-hmm.
like you're never going to do it because everybody enjoys things differently. So we had talked about Final Fantasy VIII,
Mm-hmm.
which is your favorite Final Fantasy.
Yes.
And
No, do you know what? Do you know? Sorry, I'm gonna get
no, go
like
ahead.
I'm sure you're getting to it, but like that's it. Is when people come to me and they go, "I'm so sorry, I don't like Final Fantasy VIII," and they go, "You do realize I'm not telling you that you need to love Final Fantasy VIII. I'm not telling you that it's an objectively brilliant game. I'm telling you that it's one of the most important video games I've ever played because it's the gateway game to this entire franchise, and it's the gateway game to basically experiencing games in the way that I do now." So I'm telling you that game, the experience that I had with that game is one of the most profound experiences I've ever had with interactive media or media in general. And that's why it's so important to me. I'm not telling you that it's a 10 out of 10 video game. I'm telling you that is almost intangible to anyone but me at that time. That's why that game is so important to me. And I love that people come up to me and they're like, "I'm so glad that you speak about that game in that way because that's my experience." And I'm not telling you that you have to have that experience, but there is just something so wonderful about that kind of meeting other people who have the same collective joy that we can share in something that we both went, okay, that changed us in some way. The idea that video games have that ability to change us is really, really cool. And I think the older we get, this is a very new medium. We are probably one of the first generations to properly grow up with video games. So we're
Mhm.
still playing them. And so kind of the net experience is you're going to enjoy video games less, I would say, because you've played more of them. And so
Right.
relatively, you're going to like I've played better video games, some of the best video games I've ever played in the past 5 years. They will
Mhm.
probably never make my top five favorite games of all time because
Right.
I'm talking about those experiences that hold such an important meaning and were formative to me in that time that changed me in some way. I'm not saying that God of War Ragnarok is not one of the best games ever, but I had a more meaningful time playing God of War, like
Mhm.
and that's not to say that I'm sure some of them are better video games, but it's the time that you play them.
Yeah,
So
and I compare it a lot to books. You can see I've got a crap ton of them behind me. But it's like these things, people look at them and they think, okay, well, art is subjective, right? And this is an art form. So, and then they get in their heads, I think some people, about what that's supposed to be. So for a book, it's like, well, if you're reading a book, you're considered smart, right? None of these books back here have any smart words in them. They're meant to be entertaining. So you get these people that are very high and mighty, right? Like, oh, I enjoy, Wuthering Heights and all of these classics. And it's like, that's good. I'm glad that you enjoy them. But I enjoy this book over here that has silly words in it and doesn't really
Hmm.
mean much. And I can eat my popcorn and enjoy it. Same thing for games. You know, there are some games that are beautiful in their art. You can see I have some, I don't know if you recognize this game down here, but this is Ori and the Will of the Wisps.
Yes.
And Ori and the Blind Forest, and that is my pinnacle. Like this is my favorite game of all time, and that is a beautiful game. But there are some people who don't like the art style of that game, and that's fine. But that's what I think is beautiful and what I thought was compelling, and it made me blubber like an idiot. But I wanted to ask something that we had discussed that I just like. I tell people about this particular part of the conversation all the time because it struck me the most. Because I said I didn't like the previous Final Fantasy games, and you said why, and I said because I don't like turn-based games, and then and then you took me aback, and you were like, "Do you find that you're like that in other aspects of your life?" And I was like, "Yeah," I was like, I never connected that. And
Hmm.
then you had talked about the barrier, the initial barrier to get into that game. Do you
Hmm.
think that it's worth people maybe because I have an example of this, but do you think maybe it's worth to give those games a try, even if that initial barrier for you is something that you're not particularly fond of? Just to, if somebody you care about is telling you like, hey, this game is really good, you should try it, and it's like, oh, well, I don't like turn-based games. It's like, yeah, but you should still give it a try.
This is different strokes for different folks, really,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to this. I will always offer someone the opportunity. I will always say, I enjoyed this. This was my experience. I would like you to share in that joy because I want you to experience the same joy that I had.
Mm-hmm.
When someone says, no, I don't want to play it, you said it earlier, it's the thing it's going. When someone says no, it's very easy for you to interpret that information as I don't want to play this because I don't value the time that you spent playing that thing. We get offended. Why do we get offended when someone says I don't want to play it? Because
Mm-hmm.
you're saying I valued my time enough to play a thing. I would like you to value the time that I spent and almost validate that. And then when you say no, this is getting very psychological, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you say no, you're saying, oh, I don't like what you like. What you like is bad. And they're
Mm-hmm.
not saying that. So when you offer something, I've become far freer with it. It's just gone, if you want to play it, it's great. I get it if you don't want to get that. Because like if someone says I should play the new Madden, I'm just not going to play the new Madden.
Right.
Because we also, some people don't even play video games because they don't have time to. So they should kind of want to play what they want, and also learn to love games in the way that we want. There are people get very offended when you don't love things in the way that they love things. People are very, very defensive because they have placed a lot of their personality into something. And a lot of people make video games their personality, and that's a wonderful, wonderful thing and should be completely celebrated. Um, I'm very lucky that I'm surrounded by loads of fans who define their personality by Final Fantasy, and I would say I'm
Mm-hmm.
one of them. I proudly say that this is such an important franchise to me. But I don't get offended if someone says I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't get offended. And I'm okay with that because I don't expect people to love turn-based combat. I
Right.
don't expect people to love it. I'd be a bit like, you give it a try, but also if you don't want to, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
You might not have time to because you've got, X number of releases coming out. You've got all of these things. It's kind of fine. Do what you want. I don't care enough. But I think that the worst thing that can happen is you offer something to someone, they play it, and then they start telling people it's terrible.
Oh.
That's
Yeah. So I'm gonna go into that because you said something that will lead on to another question I have down here, but I wanted to give you the example that I had is that I didn't think that I would like BG3. And then I saw someone play it and I liked the story aspect so much that I was like, I don't like top-down games.
Mhm.
And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give it a try because I really like the story aspect. I think it looks really cool. And I tried it and I loved it. I still haven't finished it yet. It's a long game.
It's a long
But
game.
sometimes it's worth it to push past that initial, I don't like this thing, and
Hmm.
you might find something that you love that you didn't know before. But you said something about the choice in video games and how there are so many of them.
Yes, too many.
Do you feel that the paradox and choice of video games has increased the criticism of of the review of games? So increased in, now criticism can mean different things, but
Hmm.
as far as like you talked about Metacritic, there's also, critics as we as gamers are critics, right?
Yeah.
So in whatever way you want to define the word critics, do you think that the paradox of choice has maybe made the personal hit when somebody says that you don't like their video game worse?
Are you saying that because there are so many? Is it because there are so many video games?
Right.
It has. How do you mean? Just to kind of specify. You think because there are so many video games out,
Right.
you think criticism has altered in some capacity?
Right. So I guess what I'm getting at and what my point is from my perspective as a
Hmm.
journalist is that because there are so many video games, and because we're not even going to discuss the state of video game journalism, that's a different topic, but because of that, a lot of journalists are rushed through games, and you talked about not
Yes.
having enough time to enjoy a video game. So do you think that because there's so many video games and because people don't have time and they want to play all these things, do you think that that affects the kind of criticism that a game gets?
Yes. Of course it does.
I think that
Because
too.
the environment that you play the video game in is the experience. Because you're
Hmm.
not describing the game, you're describing the experience. We've gone past graphical fidelity right now. You can't be like the graphics are great. Like, yes, we'll say the frame rate dips, but do people mark that down for it? No, they don't really. The amount of games that have like people forgive it a lot because we forgive, it's a review code. They'll patch it out. They'll patch it out. It's fine. We're talking about how does this experience sing with us? What's my personal experience? And I I've seen today, I've seen reviews for Zelda have dropped literally just now.
Hmm.
I've seen 3-star reviews, I've seen 9 out of 10.
What
That's
does that mean
massive.
to them? Yeah.
What does that mean?
And
What does that mean? And it's like
right.
because it's what do you bring to it? Does it mean that I'm sure there are going to be people who are going to give it 10 out of 10. I'm sure people are going to give it a 4 out of 10. That doesn't mean anything. That means that that person didn't have a great experience playing that video game. There's a 4 out of 10 Prey review out there on IGN, I think, because the person who played it, it crashed all the time. Now, Prey is widely considered to be one of the better immersive sims of the past 15 years.
Hmm.
It's amazing, but the time the reviewer played it, they had a 4 out of 10 experience because it technically crashed all the time and it ruined their experience. Does that invalidate their review? No, because it's a
Right.
4 out of 10 review, but does it like criticism around a game changes as well. I
Hmm.
love reanalysis of a game. I love a reanalysis of BioShock Infinite. Like I'm still a BioShock Infinite super fan. I love that
Hmm.
game. I'm unapologetically a fan of that game. I recognize people fucking hate it because they think it betrays a lot of the things that BioShock sets up. Um, I think it's wicked. I think it's a wicked video game because I've chosen to kind of go, yeah, that was. I remember playing it and finding like always a lighthouse. I thought that was really neat. Um, and am I going to revisit the video game ever? No, because I actually find that time with that game to be really sacred to me and really valuable. But the criticism around Bioshock really shifted, from when it was released, the hype to then kind of like people wanted to critically reanalyze it. And there is a genre of YouTube video, so and so 10 years later, does it hold up?
Right. And you can say that about a lot of video games too, because a lot of video games, when you get your game out there to the world in this day and age where there's a lot of technicality that goes behind, how a video game operates. You can look at Cyberpunk 77. That was a shit show when it dropped, and then we had No Man's Sky, which was another shit show when it dropped, and then you
Hmm.
come back to you look back, and you look back at the reviews, right? And that's what I kind of meant when what do you think of when you say that's a great game? I don't understand the hate it gets, because that might carry over from somebody who hasn't looked back at it and
Hmm.
doesn't know that all of these issues were fixed. And now Cyberpunk 77 gets a lot of praise, and so does No Man's Sky and all of these other games.
Hmm.
So I wanted to connect that because we're talking a little bit about you said that Bioshock Infinite, people didn't like it because it didn't have some of the elements that Bioshock set up. There's a conversation going on right now, and I saw it on Twitter yesterday, about what makes a Final Fantasy game a Final Fantasy game. Have you seen the conversation? I'm sure you have.
I'm across pretty much every conversation about Final
I
Fantasy there
had a
is.
I had a feeling. So let's get your take on that. So Final Fantasy 16, a lot of people, I don't understand it. First of all, I don't have that opinion. I feel like Final Fantasy 16 is the perfect Final Fantasy game for me. But what do you think? What characteristics do you think make up a Final Fantasy game, and why do you think people are saying that 16 isn't a true Final Fantasy game?
I'll preface it by saying, love what you want to love, like what you want to like, and hate what you want to hate. I will never tell anyone to like something that they don't want to, like. I, when it comes to Final Fantasy, the way I describe it as a franchise to people, I'm like, it is an anthology series with kind of recurring motifs,
Right.
crystals, defying fate, a degree of fantasy setting. Sometimes you'll get a Moogle, sometimes you'll get a Cid, but other than that, it's like that's what it is. It's an underdog discovers themselves in order to achieve something in a fantasy setting. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Whatever you want it to be is what you want it to be. To some people, Final Fantasy will always be Final Fantasy 6.
Hmm.
To some people, Final Fantasy will always be 7, 8, and 9. Some people, it will only ever be Triple Triad, or it will be Blitzball. It is what you want it to be. It's what you bring to it. Some people will tell you that Final Fantasy 12 isn't a Final Fantasy because of X, Y, and Z. Others will now reanalyze it and say that it's the most Final Fantasy that's ever Final Fantasied. I think because it's a franchise that people are so passionate about, they're constantly going to reanalyze it and re-engage with it as a franchise. And 16 will be reanalyzed and re-engaged with when the next one comes along, and the next one, and the next one, and we will figure out where it sits in people's minds. But for some people, it will always be their favorite, and some people it will not. And that's so fine. Love what you love. What makes a Final Fantasy, whatever Final Fantasy means to you. Because again, it's what you bring to the experience. What was the most meaningful experience about Final Fantasy VIII for you? Was it seven, for instance? Was it the mini games? Was it the turn-based combat? Was it the world? Was it the sense of freedom? Was it the sense of discovery? Like, when we talk about Final Fantasy, what is it for me? What the franchise gave me was, again, I think I said it was the sense of discovery. It was every single time a new world, a new cast of characters that I get to explore in this way. It's the theme music, there's so many things that each individual entry into the franchise brings, and I love them for that. I think each are as good as each other, and they all have their strengths. My post box. They all have. Oh my god! And I think it shows you how passionate the fan base is, that it constantly wants to analyze itself in that way. And there have been so many entries to compare each one to.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so yeah, maybe that's my answer. What makes Final Fantasy? Whatever you want to bring to it, doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
And as somebody
Um,
who hasn't like played the past Final Fantasies, for me it brings something completely different because I kind of entered it in the era of like Final Fantasy 14 was my first, and
mhm.
then I went to Final Fantasy 7. I got like to chapter 13 out of 18, and then I think my husband accidentally deleted my save. I got really upset and never played it again.
Yeah,
So I just I ended up watching like a recap so I could play Rebirth. Still haven't had a chance to play it yet. Really glad I don't have to
Rebirth's
review
fab.
it this time. Yeah, I can't wait to
Rebirth.
play it.
God, it's a monster in size. It's
I
actually
heard.
I marvel at it. I think it is such an achievement. Every time I'm like, wow, they did that. I can't believe they did that. Um, I think they're crazy. They're crazy for trying to remake Seven in the way that they're remaking it. But
Yeah, in 3 parts.
three
It's
parts.
it's awesome though, because I never got to experience the first one, and I probably won't ever, because you and I have talked about how I don't like turn-based games. Although I did purchase and download the remastered version of Final Fantasy VIII, and I am going to try it. It was on sale, so I was like, you know
Do
what?
you know what you can do on these games is they did them with the Pixel remasters as well. You can do 4 times speed, so maybe you
That's
can do
probably what I'll
faster.
do.
Just
Yeah.
speed up the battles. I think that's it. If you can get through stuff as quickly as possible, it saves it. I recently played Octopath Traveler 2 last year. Last year, yeah, last year, and I doubled the speed of the battles because I still spent like 93 hours on that game, but that was with double speed battles. So
Yeah.
it saves it when you're doing a turn-based thing every single time. And there's a repetitive thing. Sometimes you just need to. You're going to shave. literally hours off a game just
Yeah.
by getting rid of those intro things.
Yeah. Especially as somebody who doesn't like combat, which is
Yeah.
what people, going back to 16, it's what a lot of people. I mean, I played it on what they call journalist mode, which was story focus mode, because I'm not good at video games. I might write about them a whole lot, but I am not good at them. The person I was watching play 16 is great at them, and
Yep.
watching him play, the regular mode, he's like, "This is easy," and I'm like, "What do you mean it's easy?" I'm not very good at video games, but for me, it was the story, and that is the most important thing to me in a video game, and it's different for a lot of people. For some people it's combat, for some people it's how the game plays, like how does it traverse through the narrative, and for some people it's the characters that can be compelling. For me, it's like, if you can tell me a good story, I'll be hooked. And Final Fantasy 16, I don't think people were quite prepared for the story that it told,
Yeah.
and it had so many layers to it, which is why I loved it so much, because it wasn't just one thing that Clive was dealing with at one time. It was like three things. It's like, I'm a bear and that's bad, and there are things happening that are bad, and like and then you have, where is my brother? That's bad. So it was like, just these layers coming together was so much fun for me to figure out, and it never went the way I thought it was going to go. And that's what I really love, is when a story can throw me off, because I went to film school, I learned the 3-act structure, I can predict a lot of things, but Final Fantasy 16 threw me for a loop, and I really loved that about it.
And no one's ever going to take that experience away from you.
Mm-hmm.
Even if someone tells you that you're wrong, you're like, well, I could, yeah. Am I wrong? No, I had that experience. I've had so many people reach out to me after the credits roll on the game and go, this game changed me in some way. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, great. Then the game was for you. Then that's great. This piece of art, this interactive art, or whatever you want to call it. Some people would, you know, call it a product, but like, let's say it's an artistic expression of a commercial idea. Um, yeah, great. It changed you in some way. And I've had loads of people who go, "Oh, I reconnected with my brother," or um, I it got me through a really hard time in my life. Those are the coolest ones, when it said it got me through a really hard time in my life, because I recognize that, because I've used games as a crutch.
Mm-hmm.
And I like a game that really resonated with me was The Last of Us Part Two. I know some people don't appreciate that game because of a lot of the subjects that it touches on, um, and how it touches on them. But at the time that I was playing it, I was in a very vulnerable state, and it spoke to me in a certain way, in the same way that Days Gone spoke to me. No, different way Days Gone spoke to me, but like, I love Days Gone. I reached out to Sony Bend afterwards and were just like, I really like your game, because
Mm-hmm.
what I need at the time for a game, whether it's a good story or whether it's a world or whether it's like me spending 170 hours on Assassin's Creed Valhalla, like sometimes I just need to go and just raid somewhere, or go and like steal a little chest, or do a little thing to distract me from what's going on in the real world, or to enlighten me into what's going on in the real world. It can do so many things. Like, I have this profound love-hate relationship with Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled.
Oh, that's such a good game. I love that game. That was my
It's
childhood, though. That's exactly what you're talking about. Like, that's the core memory for me, is
yeah.
CTR.
I didn't play the original Medieval on PlayStation 1. I never
Mm-hmm.
played the original Medieval, but they remade it, and it kind of came out during lockdown, and I don't think it really they remastered it, but they really upgraded it. And it came out during lockdown, and very few people played it. I absolutely loved it because I never played it on PS1, and I had the best time. And it got a lot of criticism, because
Mm-hmm.
I think people were saying it wasn't, up to the same standards that Spyro was, or Crash Bandicoot was. But I just had the best time with Medieval, because it hit me at exactly the time that I needed it to.
Right.
I needed a game like Medieval. I needed, a skeleton knight to kind of like go around a world and like solve some silly puzzles and swing a sword. I needed it, and it saved me in many ways, because it kind of helped my sanity and helped me kind of decompress from the world, or understand the world. Um, like, is the game good? I don't know. I had a great time playing it.
Yeah. I think, too, it really bothers me when, there's a whole discourse, and I think the rest of this podcast, at least for the next couple episodes, will focus on this because it's been a really hot topic in the 14 community. But women gamers,
Hmm.
or marginalized gamers as a whole, if we get harshly criticized on what we love because of our gender identity, our
Hmm.
sexual identity, all of these things, and that bothers the crap out of me because of everything we've talked about. That people say, oh, well, you like The Sims and Stardew Valley and this or that, and you're not a real gamer. Which I can't stand the gatekeeping. I don't understand the
Hmm.
gatekeeping. Why are we not allowed to love all of these things and also call ourselves gamers because it's a game? So yes,
Hmm.
you're a gamer. That just, to me, is wild that people have that opinion.
Yes. Yes, it is wild. It's absolutely wild. I, it's um, what it's a very difficult topic to speak
Mhm.
about because you constantly feel like you're walking through a minefield.
Yeah.
And I think I speak about this a lot with friends and colleagues, and I'm trying to. There is obviously a lot of discourse that goes around at the moment with regards to um, the way in which women are represented in video games, the way in which men are represented in video games, the way that who should be allowed to enter this space. I
Hmm.
think it's become very, very territorial, and voices have been amplified.
Hmm.
Other voices are being amplified. I think also a lot of voices are being amplified because there is no middle ground anymore. There is no place for actual discourse because people aren't arguing over facts. There's no such thing as facts anymore. They're only opinions. And you
Right.
cannot convince anyone's opinion. You can't. It's a fool's errand to think that you can convince someone who already has an opinion to have another opinion because you think that we're tricked as kids, right? They're like a debate, you can outfox someone. It's like doesn't work that way. If someone feels a certain way, they're going to keep feeling that way, and they're going
Hmm.
to try in their head to. You're not going to change someone's opinion by out tricking them. Maybe that's me being very cynical.
No,
So
I,
it's about
I, I think you're on the right
yeah,
track there. Yeah.
and I think there is this incredible territory that we exist in. You say this that you don't feel safe in certain spaces. And I'm like, I fully recognize that because you feel like people are constantly testing you. I'm a white cis man existing in a space. I am very, very fortunate. I've kind of won the kind of the social lottery, right? I'm so aware of my privilege, and so I don't experience the prejudice that anyone else does. People kind of accept that. I'm the generic character on the generic character creator. That's what I look like, right? Like an old school Bioware Commander Shepard. Um, but times are changing. Times are
Yeah.
changing, and
Yeah.
discourse is changing, and hopefully we can kind of continue to have this conversation in a healthy way. I don't know whether it can be healthy, um, but I think you are. I think it annoys me when people don't feel like they can have a safe space to talk about. I'm always trying to create a safe space in the communities that I have. I always try and be. I said this in an interview recently, a vector for joy, and I want people to feel like they can be anyone they want to be around me, and feel safe and heard and respected.
Yeah.
Um, and that was what I would say because like there are some people out there who choose to not and actually make it their entire personality to create division, and that's a real shame.
Yeah. I'm 100% with you. And I almost feel like, I don't have the big platform like someone like you does. I don't have a bunch of followers. I have some, and I do try. I don't know if you've looked at any of the past work I've done, but the one thing that I am proud that I did is back in the day, back before Dawn Trail came out, Final Fantasy 14 had some really crappy tools to stop people from harassing you. So you could basically go up to another character, and you know how Final Fantasy 14 works. Everybody's in the same areas,
Yeah.
and like they could see you on the screen even if you blocked them. They might not be able to see what you are saying, but you can follow them into their houses. You can follow them around, and it was just like crazy how awful these tools were. And if you blocked somebody, it only blocked that character. So if they pulled up another character and came into the world, they could still find you anywhere because you can search them. It was just awful. So it's like I am sick of this, and I'm seeing so many awful stories, especially about women, marginalized genders, and
Yes.
everybody suffered from it. But I was like, I'm tired of this. I want to put a stop to it. And I wrote a giant article. It took me like 2 months to even put this stuff together. I wrote an article about how the Final Fantasy XIV tools were awful, and got Square Enix to respond to it in the article, but it was a very non-committal answer. And then about 7 months later, they announced that they were going to change the blacklist and make it better. And I just, as somebody who gets harassed in this space, I was over the moon.
Why do you get harassed in the space?
For a multitude of reasons.
Do you want to talk about it?
I don't know.
We don't have to. We don't have to.
It's a very difficult topic, and one that I do plan on addressing in other episodes, because I've started to. I think there's a lot of trepidation about posting on Twitter about your opinion about this, right? Because you're right. You're gonna get like both sides, right? Exactly what you said. Like, you're gonna get both sides, and none of them can be convinced. So if I post even anything, like a little thing, like women belong here, I get like, go back to the kitchen, or like,
Yep.
I've gotten threats and like, all sorts of stuff, because I have that opinion. And that's one of the reasons I get harassed, is because I have an opinion and I dare to share it on Twitter. But
Yeah.
one of my good friends, Erin Ashley Simon, she's in the gaming space as well. She's more on the esports side, but she told me, be careful what you post online, but also be unashamed about what you believe is right. So that's just what I started doing. And that's why I'm so passionate about the fact that everybody belongs here and everybody deserves to have a safe space in what they experience in gaming. And online communities are tough because, it kind of is ingrained in gaming.
It is.
So
It is. It's part of it. And by me saying it's a part of it, that's not me saying that it should be a part of it. But it's something that the industry is having to reckon with at the moment, because also there's a sense of ownership that a lot of people have. It's a fascinating. Again, this is a podcast in and of
yeah.
itself. Is the nature of online games and people hiding behind avatars, and the empowerment that they have in doing so, and what that says, not just about the game itself, but about the people who play those games and why they feel the need to do that in an online space that they can't necessarily do in an offline space. And I think there is a whole psychological study as to online bullying and where it comes from. There's a fantastic. Yeah, I mean, it's a book that's had a really kind of important effect on the way that I view social media in general, which is it's now an old book, John Ronson's "So You've Been Publicly Shamed," and he talks about, he's a brilliant journalist, writes a lot for The Guardian. We used to write a lot for The Guardian articles, did some stuff does a lot of stuff for the BBC now, and does these kind of deep dive investigations into kind of like alt-right, also looks into marginalized communities and really engages with them and just kind of like asks them questions and just kind of allows them to reveal themselves, not for the way that they are, but just let them to kind of like speak on their behalf. And it's really, really interesting. But So You've Been Publicly Shamed talks about online mobs, really. What happens when an individual does a singular thing that's bad, and then everyone jumps on it, and usually it'll be like, that person needs to get raped, or that person needs to be this, that, and the other. And it's because in that online lynch mob that's happening, those voices are so loud that those evils are lost because they're all being directed into that one avenue.
Right.
And it's amazing how people feel empowered by that. They feel empowered by the keyboard. We call them keyboard warriors. There's something so amazing that you can just shout into the internet and you're not going to have real world repercussions because they're two separate things. And,
Right.
and one thing that's taken away from that is, they'll be fine. They'll be fine, because they feel like they're punching up. They feel like they're punching up. So when we attack a celebrity and everyone goes in on a celebrity, you don't realize that actually
there's a person back there.
It's a person. It's a person. The dehumanization of the individual behind the keyboard is fascinating. And I think in online communities that can be seen in that way as well.
Yeah. I think, do I remember you reading a mean tweet somewhere?
I've read loads of mean tweets.
Have you done that?
Maybe I've read mean tweets. Like I people say mean stuff about me all the time. Like I put myself out there enough that someone's going to have a negative opinion of me. I'm sure people find me insufferable. I'm sure they find my videos annoying, or they find my opinions on something abhorrent, that's fine. I kind of accept that, because, think what you think. You're your own mind. I'm not going to make you like me. I
Mhm.
hope that people like me, but if you don't like me, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. Um, because I did at the beginning. I was really nervous. I
Mhm.
was really, really nervous. I really wanted everyone to like me, and I would say that I'm in many ways a people pleaser. But um, now I guess, I sometimes save them. I know sometimes I have them on my phone. I have a folder in my phone of mean things people have said about me.
Do
I
you
don't know about
really?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Hmm.
I don't know why I do it. But it's fascinating. I mean, I should read some to you. No, I like people have said some mean stuff about me, and I
Yeah.
find it fascinating sometimes. And also, like, I'll be tagged in them sometimes.
Mhm.
You know, um,
That's wild to me. Like, I mean, there's a lot of talk about that in the book community too. Like, people will post a bad review and they'll tag the author. And
mhm.
I'm like, if I post a good review, I'm on Book Talk and all that good stuff. And when I post a review, if it's bad, I don't tag the author. But if it's a
No,
good review, like, I will tag the author, because for as many people that are tagging them for a bad review, like, I want them to see my good one. Like, at least
hmm
see that your work is valued and things like that. But yeah, it's I don't understand tagging people in it. Why? What's the purpose?
I get
They want
tagged
you to
in so
feel
much
bad.
stuff. I
I
get
mean,
tagged in
I
all
don't
the
get
stuff. It's
tags,
crazy.
but yeah, if I post literally anything about, like, hey, women belong in this space, I just get so many people. I use the block button very liberally, and I hide the replies. Like, I don't even, because the community that I have curated has come to see me as a safe space for that topic. So I don't want them to see all of these things that I have to see, because I don't care. And there was a time, same as you, where, like, I did care. Right? Like, and I wouldn't
Yeah.
post that stuff online because I wanted people to like me as a journalist. So I already had, like, the bad rap of being a journalist, because
hmm
apparently journalists are bad. And then, you tack onto that, like, having an opinion that people don't like. And it's like, oh, I get all of the people that are saying you're awful and you deserve this and that. And it's like, I belong
It's
here. Deal
it's
with it.
hard. It's hard not to take things personally. It
Hmm.
is really hard to not take things personally, and I think I even think I did. I found myself in a bit of a very depressed space at the end of last year, especially because I think people thought that I would not be in a depressed space. I had a lot of great things happening to me at that time, but I was in a really depressed space because I didn't know how to deal with everything, because everything
Hmm.
was just so full on. I essentially became one of the front facing people of a big video game, and that was hard. That was hard because I was used as arguments. You know,
Yeah.
you kind of become dehumanized in a way, for both positive and negative. What happens when you're being weighed off against other people, or the work that you've done is being used as a barometer of something, and that's really difficult to deal with, because I start going like, oh God, have I let people down? Am I letting people down with this? The pressure that you place on yourself. Um, and certainly the negativity when it constantly comes at you. So you use the block button deliberately. I use the mute button because
Okay.
my notifications go off all the time. Like, I will
Oh, I'm
never turn my
sure.
phone on there. I'm just not like, I'm very lucky that I have a very engaged community of people, or anything I post has a huge amount of engagement. So I sometimes have to curate what I see, because there is so much information being thrown at me all at once. God, that sounded like a humble brag, didn't it? But it's like, it's because I've been very front facing, and I think people
Right.
want to engage with me in that way. And I sometimes feel like I can't be as accessible as I want to be, because there is just so much stuff happening, and I get tagged in stuff all of the time. And it's so fucking awesome, because people are so inventive and stupid and wonderful, and want to play the stupid games that I play online with them.
Hmm.
Um, but it's hard. It is hard sometimes, and so I've
Yeah.
kind of got so much better at it this year, of just kind of
That's
going, doesn't
good.
matter, doesn't matter. Like me if you want to like me, don't like me if you don't want to like me. It's fine. you know I think also
Yeah.
making it about the work now. I've kind of really
Hmm.
gone back to work this year. At the end of last year, it was very much like, okay, let's celebrate Final Fantasy 16. 2024, sorry, has been me working on the next stuff that hopefully people can have an opinion on. That's been really cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see some of the stuff you've got going. And I've got some stuff that I've got going too. So you were talking about, like, that's a whole topic in itself. And I don't know if you know her, Dr. Rachel Kurt. Do you know her?
I do not.
Okay, she has a podcast called Zeitgeist, and I think she's a therapist. I'm not positive, but she's she's always analyzing like the psychology behind video game communities, and she has a really good book that has a chapter on online communities, which is what I was reading in prep for this interview. So I'm probably going to have her on for the next one, so I can really dive
Yay.
deep into that topic. But I want to talk a little bit about those games that you mentioned. So we know, I think, two at least that are coming up,
Go on.
which is Expedition 33,
Yes.
and then the
First Berserker Kazan.
that's the one, yeah. Because I was like, I
Yeah.
don't remember the first part of it. Kazan, that one looked a lot like Hades. Is that like kind of like almost like Hades?
What, the
That
first
one?
Berserker?
Yeah.
It's hardcore action RPG. That's what they're calling
Okay.
it. So think of it in the vein of, I don't know if they're calling it a Souls-like, but
Hmm.
that sort of thing. So it's hardcore. I played it at Gamescom, and it's
Oh, did
hardcore.
you?
Yeah, it's great. It's really fun. I mean, I love you know, I love that genre. It's amazing that's become a genre, really. That's how
Yeah.
profound the influence of Dark Souls has been, or Demon Souls, really, if we're going to go there. Like the legacy of that to create a like on top of it, I think is pretty mad. But yeah, First Berserk is awesome. I love the fact that they're letting me do that.
Yeah.
I
I'm
also
probably.
people
Go
I
ahead.
feel like people are letting me do it. Like they're letting me have a go. Like let Ben have a go. It's cool. You've seen the trailer. He's
Yeah.
a tortured soul. He's seeking revenge. We've heard it all before.
We love the broody characters. I love the
Yeah,
broody characters. I probably won't play that one myself because I'm not good at video games, but I will definitely watch somebody play that.
yeah. It's. I think it'd be really fun, and I think it's all. You don't have to play everything. It's like having the opportunity. For me, it's always going to be: is the character interesting? Is the game cool? Is it going to appeal to people who like those types of games?
Hmm.
And you've got those two games you mentioned, Expedition 33, which I can't kind of reveal what it
Yeah, I
is,
figured.
in what capacity I'm a part of that video game, but I certainly was a part of that first reveal at the Xbox showcase, which was so cool. That was
Yeah.
that
You and I
reveal.
chatted about that a little bit. How you said that you told them that
Yeah,
people were going to recognize you instantly, and then they did.
yeah, and they did. Yeah, and that was the opposite of humbling. That was like, that's cool. I was getting messages constantly throughout that showcase. I talk about being tagged in it. People, is that Ben Starr right here? First of all, I love the fact that people feel like they can reach out and do that, which is
Hmm.
neat. And secondly, the fact that people even recognized
Oh, I
me.
recognized it instantly. I was streaming that with a friend of mine, and I was like, "That's Ben Starr." And he's like, "How do you know that?" And I was like, "I just know. I listened to him in Final Fantasy 16 for hours. I know what he
Mhm.
sounds like." So they were like,
Yeah.
"What are you, the Ben Starr whisperer?" And I was like, "Yeah, maybe."
Yeah, you kept feel free. I love it. Join the team. That game is wicked, and um, I'm so I feel so lucky that Sandfall let me be a part of whatever it is that I'm a part of in that project. I can't
I
say,
know you can't say anything.
but it's very cool to be allowed to do stuff like that. There's always the worry that you're never going to work again.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
and
I know a lot of the 14 actors told me that too.
Yeah, and I've been
Yeah.
I've been so kind of welcomed into this community, and for me, the end of 2023 was about how do I kind of make sure that I'm still a part of this industry? How can I turn up to these events and still feel like I'm contributing in some way, in a meaningful way? And this year has I get to it's just grapefruit, bearing some grapefruit, having a fab time, and there's stuff that I can't talk about yet that I will
Hmm.
get to talk about, and it's just fucking cool. Yeah.
Do you when you look at a project? So I know you probably go through an agent to get your roles. Yeah.
Good question. Yes. Yes, in some way, yeah. It's
Do
getting
you
get
go ahead?
no, you go. You ask the question, I'll go.
Do you get to like look at the project before you audition for it, or do you just audition for everything and then look later?
I have found myself in a very unique position in the past year. I'm very active. I'm a very active participant in the video games industry.
Right.
I already had like a kind of, not like a forensic knowledge, but like a deep passion for the industry itself, the people who work in it, the companies who make games, how they make games, their philosophies, their podcast. I listen to all the podcasts and see the way in which people talk about games. Like I have been, uh, a, I have engaged in this industry in a very very passionate way,
Right.
and so to then kind of to have that knowledge, to have that understanding, to have that love and passion, and then to be able to put that into a professional capacity has been very, very useful, because it means that, I got my part in Warframe 1999 because Rebecca Ford and I just got on.
Hmm.
We started chatting and went, "You're cool," and we just were friends. And then the opportunity to have a quick read for a part came up, and she said, "Would you like to read for this part?" And I did, and that's how I became Arthur in Warframe 1999. I didn't go through an agent.
Right.
Reb just said, "Do you want to audition for this?" And I did. And I there's an amazing casting director called Julia Bianco who she's just awesome. She's based out of LA, and has been such a huge supporter of mine, and is a wonderful human being, and has been very, very kind and offered opportunities that I wouldn't otherwise have had
Hmm.
I kind of just sat back and waited for roles to come. Like
Right.
I'm always looking for interesting stuff and work in interesting ways with people, um, and I think that I didn't want to be one of these people that went, "I played Clive now. I've been nominated and won awards. I'm going to sit back and wait for everyone to ask me." I'm like, "No, put me in your game.
Hmm.
Put me in your game. I want to be in your game. I want to work with you. I want to work with you. I want to work with you." And showing that willing and going out and actively pursuing work and saying, "I want to work with you," is what I've done, because I want to also have a creative say in some capacity. I
Right.
don't just want to sit back and just I don't want to sit back and just like, yeah, think of England. I want to just really do really cool shit with people. And if I want to work with someone, I'm going to ask. And even if it's not going to work out in the next 2 years, it might work out in the next 10, because I
Right.
don't plan on going anywhere.
That's awesome. I'm really excited to see that. I guess for the last little time we have, tell me about some of the games you've enjoyed recently.
Oh, great. What have I? I'm going to, okay, just hold please. Obviously the most recent game I platinumed is Astrobot. Love Astrobot. But this year has been indies for me that have really
Indies.
hit
What
hit
kind of
me.
indies? I'm a big fan of indies.
I loved Crow Country,
Okay.
which is a brilliant survival horror throwback. It kind of feels like Resident Evil by way of the art style from Final Fantasy VII. Um, it's very cool. It's set in an abandoned theme park called Crow Country.
Hmm.
It's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. You can kind of finish it in like 7 or 8 hours. It's
Wow.
wicked.
Yeah.
Indica, which is
Okay.
by 11-bit. I think it's 11-bit made it. And it's basically like a nun game where you play, and it's about existential dread, really, but you play as a nun in this kind of absurdist Russia. It's crazy and weird and bizarre and glorious. And I speak a lot about "Thank Goodness You're Here,"
I
Animal
did
Well.
see you raved about that game.
Yeah, I do, because it's so stupid. It's such a
Hmm.
stupid video game. And they went, "We're going to make a video game that's just so stupid." And I will keep talking about it because it's just, Cole Supper, who made it. There's just a couple of lads from Barnsley who went, we're going to make a game that's just so about the North. And my dad's from Huddersfield. Like, my dad is from the north of England, and it feels so. My dad passed away 2 years ago, like 3 years ago now. Like his I feel like I have an emotional connection to the absurdity of it as well,
Hmm.
because that's where I used to go when we used to go back to his hometown. Is just something so profoundly northern, and there is just this flavor. It feels like it's just a part of him exists in that game as well, which I love. And it's just so fucking stupid. It's such a stupid video game. And Yeah, that's beautiful. There's obviously other AAA video games that have come out. Rebirth is absolutely exquisite. Like, it's a big old boy.
Yeah.
It's a big old boy, but I want to also big up the cast. I will always big up the cast to Rebirth. I think they do such an amazing job, and they're not just it's not just an amazing job. They're amazing people. They are such incredible people. And I will say this also: all the Final Fantasy um, actors who I've had the pleasure of being around or working with or talking to, there is this real sense of community now with all of us.
Yeah.
If you've been in a Final Fantasy game, it's almost like
You're in the group
welcome to the
chat.
you're in the
I know
group
there's a
chat.
group chat.
Yeah, yeah, you're in the group chat
Even
and welcome.
Amanda and Jason are in it, right? The singers from 14.
Yeah, there's so many there's so many different chats with people, and it's awesome to have. And everyone is so talented and brings their own flavor to it. And what a time to be alive that we get that. That's wicked.
Absolutely. I've had the same exact experience with all of the 14 and Final Fantasy voice actors that I've spoken with. So
Yeah,
y'all are
they're
just
great.
wonderful people. And it's so much fun to get to talk to you.
Thanks.
So I really appreciate you finally having our chat. I know we've been chasing this one for a while.
Yeah,
And
I
I will
I
leave
hope.
you. Go ahead.
I said I hope it was everything. I hope we managed to. I feel like this is one of these topics that you could speak for hours on.
Oh,
And
hours. Yeah, absolutely. That's why I asked you for a time limit.
yeah,
I will leave you with a game recommendation that I have for you.
go on.
So you have inspired me to play Final Fantasy VIII. I would like you to play One Shot. Have you heard of
Okay.
that? It
Nope.
is an indie game. It's on the Switch as well, but I would recommend playing it on PC. It is
Yeah.
a short game. It will only take you 3 to 4 hours to get through, but it does have replayability.
Thank you.
And it is one of my favorite indie games of all time. Grease is another one that was made by.
Oh my god, I
Oh,
love
you
that
like Grease?
game.
I can't wait for Neva. I am chomping at the bit for Neva.
It looks so good.
I can't wait. But
Yeah.
thank you so much for your time, and I will be uploading this to YouTube, so I will tag you in it on Twitter. You'll see,
Thank you.
I always tag you. I know it's hit or miss that you'll see it, but I will try either
Thank
way.
you.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Ben. Have a wonderful rest of your night, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Yes, please. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.